This is Joseph Carpenter. Today is December the 12th, 2023, and I'm interviewing Dr. Jaya Davis. This interview is taking place at University Hall on the campus of University of Texas at Arlington. This interview is sponsored by the UTA History Department, College of Liberal Arts, and is part of the Maverick Veterans Voices Project. Welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Great. Where are you from originally, and tell me a little bit about your growing up.
I am from Palestine, Texas. If you don't know where that
Wow.
is, that is a small town, East Texas.
Right.
So I grew up first probably 12 years of my life in the country, very country. We had horses and cows.
Oh, wow.
And I wouldn't say we lived on a farm, but it was very rural. And transitioned into city life, which
Yes.
Palestine is the at the time population of about 20,000. So I went to school in Palestine, graduated from high school there.
Really?
I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so what did your parents do for a living?
So my mom worked she had a few jobs throughout that process. She retired from the state of Texas working with food stamps and certification of that sort. And my dad was a art teacher. So he was the art teacher for our school for middle school and high school.
Oh, wow.
So you can't get away with anything when your dad is a teacher in your high school, let me tell you.
Yeah, especially as big as Palestine is.
Right, and we were the smaller school.
Yeah.
So we were Palestine High, we were Westwood High. So that my graduating class had, I think, 87 students.
Oh my goodness,
Yes.
really? So how did you become interested in the military?
Interesting story. I'm sure they all are. That was not something that I had conceived of for myself. I was getting actually close to graduation. I was valedictorian of my class, but I mean, 87 people, so let's not put high praise on that. But I really didn't know what I was going to do next. And I had taken the ASVAB and scored well on the ASVAB, so a recruiter had started calling. And we all know how recruiters are, very persistent.
Yes.
And one thing led to another. Didn't really have another plan. So I was like, well, this is my plan.
Yeah. So why the Navy?
I know in hindsight why the Navy. I don't know if it was as planned at the moment. That's the recruiter that was the most persistent.
I see. Okay.
In hindsight, having served on a number of joint bases, I'm happy with that decision.
Yes, yes.
Which I'm sure we'll talk more about.
Right, okay. And were any of your family members in the military?
No, none of my family was in the military. And quite honestly, I am from a hippie couple family that were anti-war. So me joining the military, I think my parents weren't together by the time I got to high school. But I think was pretty hard for my mom. I lived with my dad, but I think it was pretty hard for my mom to accept having a child in the military. She is very anti-violence, anti-war to this day. So it wasn't necessarily something that everybody in my family was supportive of.
Right.
They were supportive of me for sure, but that choice was a surprise to some people.
And tell me what your job was in the Navy.
That was also a little bit convoluted. So when I joined the military, I was on delayed enlistment. So I graduated from high school. And at the time, so this was 93, there was a 2-year option. So I originally joined the Navy as a non-rate 2-year enlisted person. So I was also, interestingly, one of the very last classes that went to boot camp in Orlando for the Navy.
Really?
We kind of closed down that boot camp division. After we graduated, everybody went up to Great Lakes. And so then I went to like a very basic sea school related to everything you need to know about the Navy, tying knots, scraping paint, all of that kind of stuff, because I was pretty sure I was bound for a ship. What ended up happening, though, is that I got sent to Camp Lejeune to be a small boat coxswain. So this is a very small boat crew, and we were responsible for being basically road guards for the Intercoastal Waterway. So I was a small boat coxswain for 17-foot cabin boats. Okay, let me back up a little bit to tell you that again, small town East Texas.
Yes.
Really never been anywhere.
Right.
Didn't even have a driver's license until I
Mhm.
was 17. And the only reason that I actually probably got it then is because in my town they didn't have enough police officers to actually give the licensing exams, the driving
Oh,
part. So if you pass the written part, you got your license. Had a license, didn't drive.
wow. Okay.
Get sent to the small boat crew. Um, there were about 8 or 10 of us, but all of the lower enlisted folk, there were 4 to 6 women. I was the only one with a license. Never
A
drove, but I
license,
had a
right.
license. And
Interesting.
so I
Yeah.
was put behind a 2.5 ton truck to pull 17-foot cabin boats and back them into the water. But I did it. So
You didn't crash
I
any or
didn't
anything
crash
like that? That's very
any.
good. Okay.
I didn't get any of them stuck, halfway off the boat ramp or anything.
Right.
Anyway, so I did that for a couple of years, and then I decided I wanted to stay in the military, but I didn't want to stay in Camp Lejeune and do the work I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I started looking at my options, and I came upon CTI, Cryptologic Technical Interpretive, which is a rate that learns another language.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a test that goes along with that. And I took that exam and I scored fairly well. So I was put into the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California to learn Arabic.
Oh, wow.
So for 15 months, I did nothing from 8 to 5 but learn Arabic.
Really?
That's right.
15 months.
15 months. We had, I think, 6 native speakers and 2 that had learned Arabic well enough to teach it. And so, after 15 months, I was an Arabic linguist. And then I went to my second C school, which was the analysis part. So DLI, Defense Language Institute, is on an Army base in California.
Okay.
Then I went to an Air Force base in San Angelo. And then I was stationed at Fort Gordon Army base in Georgia.
And what did that job entail? Are you allowed to talk about?
I am not technically allowed to talk about it. I can give some general outlines. A lot of my work was in a room like this, no windows, behind a computer. But yeah, we intercepted voice traffic and interpreted it.
And how long did you do that?
I did that actually only did it for 2 years. My second enlistment took me to 6 years total. Okay. So I had the first, then I had the school, and then I had 2 years on job.
And what made you decide to get out when it was time at the end of that last enlistment?
Yeah, so in '99, which was the end of my enlistment, I was just ready to do something else. Obviously I didn't know that in 2 years we would have 9/11 and it would be a totally different environment. I have a lot of friends that got stop loss that couldn't get out because they were Arabic linguists and they needed to stay in their positions. My inactive reserve ended a few months before September 11th.
Oh, wow. So just kind of just in time. Were you tempted to go back in?
I was tempted to go back. I wasn't tempted actually to go back in, but I was tempted to do contract work.
Oh, I see. That could have been an option for you.
Correct.
Oh, okay. But you decided not to.
I decided not to. Yeah. I was back here in Texas and
right. Yes.
with my family and didn't want to go back.
Right. And I have to say this, Palestine is known for its seagoing vessels.
Oh, it is. Yes. I did not go back to Palestine. Let me make that clear. I have not lived in Palestine since I left in '93.
Right. Oh, really? Okay.
I have visited a few times, but yeah, I haven't gone back.
Are your parents both still there?
My dad still lives in the area.
All right. And when did you start college?
So I started actually in high school, like students still do today, but it wasn't dual credit or anything. It was me, driving to the community college, down the street.
Right.
So, again, I didn't drive. I hitched rides back and forth. Let me be very clear about that. If anybody's thinking, wait, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah, she said she didn't drive.
She said she didn't drive. So I started when I was still in high school, and in every duty station, I was picking up a few classes here or there. So actually, by the time I got to where I would finish my undergrad and my master's degree, which was University of Houston Clear Lake.
Mm-hmm.
I can't recall now, but I had so many transcripts from so many different schools. I was just very happy to actually finish a degree so I didn't have to accumulate all of those transcripts every time I
Every
switched
time you
schools.
do it. Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. And so University of Houston Clear Lake, why
Correct.
that school?
Well, I moved to the Houston area.
Okay.
My grandparents lived in the
Oh,
in the Houston area, so I moved. My husband, who I met in the Navy,
Oh,
he was a
okay.
Hebrew linguist. So
Really?
yes,
That's interesting.
yeah. We met
Okay.
at Fort Gordon at our duty station. He was a Hebrew linguist. I was an Arabic linguist. So I like to say we have our own little Middle East conflict.
Right.
Right. Right. But so I moved to the Houston area, and it was convenient for me to go to University of Houston Clear Lake.
I see. Okay. And so you finished both your bachelor's and master's degree there?
Correct. I got my associates before I got out. It was a great program as part of the Defense Language Institute. You can get an associate's in your foreign language. So I got that, and then I got my bachelor's of science in psychology, UH Clear Lake, and then my master's in criminology.
Why did you decide on criminology?
Yeah, that's another convoluted answer. None of my paths are clear.
Right,
so let me
right.
just say that now. Like so many of our students now, they think they want to be behavioral analysts.
Sure.
They want to, in my day, it was more like Clarice Starling, right, and Silence of the Lambs. Now it's CSI and all of those more sophisticated shows. But I thought that that's something that I was interested in doing. And at the time, the closest forensic psychology program was at St. Houston. Mm-hmm. And so I was interested in getting accepted into that. It was a master's to PhD program at the time. And I approached one of my professors and I said, this is what I'm interested in. You went to Sam, could you write me a letter of recommendation? And he said, in my day, we didn't do this master's to PhD program. You get your master's and then you get your PhD. Right. Stick around, finish your master's here, and then I'll write you a letter for the PhD. And honestly, I wasn't ready to move. I was pursuing that path, but it made sense to stay. So I stayed and I finished my criminology master's, and during that time met my first influential mentor and advisor in that program. And I took a course with him on race and crime, and it opened my world to all of the issues related to racial disparity in criminal processing. And so I wanted to do research in that area. And so that set the next part of my professional course.
I see. And this mentor was where?
He was at University of Houston Clear Lake.
Oh, he was. Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Everett Penn.
Okay. And so the advice that you got to continue with your master's degree turned out to be?
It turned out well.
Yeah, it turned out to be good.
I'm very lucky. I get some good advice, and things usually fall into place.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. And so then you decided to go on for your PhD.
Right.
Tell me about that decision.
Yeah. So once I had this kind of academic awakening, I guess, about what was interesting to me, it was like, okay, well, if I'm going to do research in this area, then I need to go on and get a PhD. So I was never, until I was really finishing my master's program, I did not, being a professor or being in academia wasn't my path. And so from there, I was still not ready to move far. All my family's in Texas, my grandparents. So by the time I graduated from my master's program, I had my first son. So so he was born, both of my children were born the last year of my master's and PhD programs.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot to be dealing with all at the same time.
I think it's more to have young children going on up for tenure than actually having children while you're graduating. So
I'm assuming that this story is coming up in just a minute.
Wherever you want to go with this. So
you had your first child.
So I had my first child. My grandparents, like I said, I moved back to the Houston area. My grandparents were close. My grandmother and grandfather were the caretakers of my baby or
Mm-hmm.
our baby,
Mm-hmm.
and that was really important to me. So I had to commute wherever I was going to go, and so that limited it again to Sam Houston and
Okay.
Huntsville have been a long commute, or the one I chose, which was Prairie View A&M, which is also a long
Yeah.
commute. So
And that's an interesting choice.
yeah,
So traditionally,
yeah, it's a
African American
historically black
University, yeah,
college.
or yeah, excuse me, that's the
Yeah,
correct.
historically black
Yes.
university, and they're the only PhD granting institution with juvenile justice as their PhD
Is
in
that
the
right?
country.
In
Yeah,
the
in the
country?
country. So
Wow.
I'm very proud to be part of that legacy.
Yeah.
You know, it being an HBCU, I don't know that I thought about it much at
Right.
first. I will certainly, though, say, and I tell this to my class, I've told it, to other people that obviously I'm not a minority, right?
Mm-hmm.
Haven't had experiences of knowing what it feels like to
Sure.
be a
Right.
minority. Stepping on an HBCU and people just looking at you like, what is this person doing
Right.
here? This person doesn't
Exactly.
fit in.
Sure.
It makes you feel different. I
Right.
was always accepted, no problems,
Mm-hmm.
but just having that little glimpse of experience of being the other, it was an interesting perspective for me.
And considering what you were pursuing,
Mm-hmm.
that fit, didn't it?
It did. It did
Gave you a
fit.
little bit better understanding of what the African
Mm-hmm.
American experience
Absolutely.
has been.
Again, I
So,
don't claim that I know the
of
African American
course, of
experience,
course.
but I certainly can understand a little bit of feeling like either people think you don't belong there or you
Yes.
don't fit in or those types of
Yeah,
things.
maybe as much understanding as we can possibly
Sure.
get. Yeah, but very good. That's interesting. And so, did you have a mentor at Prairie View?
I did. My mentor at Prairie View, that's one of the reasons I went to Prairie View
Okay.
is he was a well-known researcher um,
Mm-hmm.
in the field. And as I was talking with my advisor from uh, University of Houston, Clear Lake, we were kind of going through the pros and cons of both universities.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to work with that specific person was really important for my career in that he offered a springboard to, not that I could not have gotten that at Sam, I'm not saying
Sure.
that at all, but he was able to give me the time and attention at a smaller school that really set up the first part of my career.
Mm-hmm. Very good. And so, when did you finish with your graduate with your PhD?
I graduated in 2010.
Okay.
And so I say, this is my first big girl job. I came straight here. I arrived on
at
campus
UTA?
at UTA in
Is that right?
2010. Yes,
Wow.
as an assistant professor.
Yes.
I like to tease. So there were two of us hired that year in our
Okay.
department,
Mm-hmm.
and I was the second choice.
Oh, okay.
I know
Yeah.
that very clearly. So I like to tease the other professor who is still in our department, and we are friends. That I know where I fit here.
Right.
I was the second choice, but I'm now the chair.
Right, you're the chair now. Yeah, that's right. So let's just remember who was the second
Right.
choice, right? So, see, when you graduated with your PhD, how did you pursue a career? What was it? Just a routine send out letters and resumes and hope something stuck, or what? How did that come about?
Yeah, so there were a few schools that I was interested in. I did not blanket send out resumes. And I recall, I was actually thinking about this the other day, and I'm not sure why, but I recall UTA and University of South Carolina were my top choices
Oh, okay.
of being employed for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of it had to do with family in both areas. But
Sure.
my advisor, mentor from UHCL said, so which of these do you really want to go to? I think he was trying to say, which one should I really put effort into writing this letter? Having written hundreds of letters of recommendation, I totally get it.
Yes.
They said, okay, which one do you want? And I said, I think UTA is where I would fit better. Mm-hmm. And so I knew from the beginning for early in the process, this is where I wanted to come. And I came for my campus visit, and everybody was very welcoming and kind. And I felt good about it, and then I didn't get the job originally because it went to the other person.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So that was, the traditional fall hiring season. And we have two main conferences a year. So we have one in November and one that's in the spring, anywhere from February to April.
Mm-hmm.
It was later that year, so it was March or April. And I
You
was
say
at,
we. What are you
I'm
referring to?
sorry,
That's all right.
criminology and criminal justice,
Oh,
the
okay.
field. Yeah.
Okay.
Um, so I was at conference in spring, and I got a call at conference that they were interested in extending an offer. So they had somebody that quit.
I see.
I was the
So
second
it was
choice, so I
just
got the
the
offer.
and
Yeah.
were you excited about
Oh
that?
yeah, absolutely.
Had you already considered?
I was thinking about this the other day too. I don't know what I was gonna do. Honestly, I mean, I
Right.
was getting close to finishing,
Yes.
and I didn't have a job,
Right.
and so I don't know what my next plan was
Right.
gonna be, but
Right.
it worked out.
Yeah.
Things
Apparently
have
it
fallen
did.
into place.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, your husband, what is he doing now?
He is realtor. He's a realtor.
Oh,
Yes.
really? So, a Hebrew linguist realtor.
Realtor. Yeah.
Okay.
So his
Yes.
path out of the Navy was a little bit different. He is. So I joked for a while. I can't joke as much as anymore, but I had a PhD or I was pursuing my PhD, and he didn't have an undergraduate degree.
Uh-huh.
So I kind of didn't force him, but encouraged that he at least finish his bachelor's degree, because he had, again, like me, he had credits from all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
So he ended up working with a university, probably many vets are familiar with, Excelsior University,
Mm-hmm.
to help him amass his credits and to get a degree,
Yes.
take a few additional courses
Sure.
and graduate. But he's always been in sales. So since we got out of the military, he's been in sales. I mean, he's sold a whole bunch of things. Never cars, but he sold a whole bunch of things.
Yes, good for him.
Yeah, and so really around right before COVID, actually, he was ready to make a change and do more, self-driven sales, and so
Very
he
good.
started real estate, and he's been doing that since.
Very good. Okay, and no master's degree for him, though.
No master's degree.
All right.
For him.
Now,
he might be. I mean, maybe at some point. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, I've got a senior now and an 8th grader, so we'll see in the future when he gets bored, when they're out of the house.
Right. He may need to get a PhD too.
Well, he might.
Yeah.
Certainly support him to get a PhD.
We have linkage there. I'll tell you about it
Okay.
later. So you started here in 2010. Did you immediately find a mentor here? Somebody that was willing to walk you through the process, or how'd that work out?
I have to sing the praises of the university mentorship program. I was hooked up my first semester with Melanie Sattler, who is now the civil engineering chair. She was, I think, right about tenure when she was my mentor, and we went through that process, and we've just kept in touch. But along the way, I've found other mentors and important people on campus.
But the university had a program to help you get adjusted.
Yes.
And so how long did it take you to get tenure?
The traditional 6 years. Okay. So I received tenure in 2016.
Wow.
At that time, I transitioned into, we had a new chair, and I transitioned into the associate chair role and graduate programs director. So it's like, happy tenure. Please do all of this work. As many people are familiar.
Right. I've heard those stories.
It happens.
Yes.
Yeah. It's real.
And so did you see yourself being beyond an academic, being an administrator? Because that's kind of
it's different.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you're going through the tenure process, and anybody that's sees this, that's on the tenure track or has gone through the process, you have second thoughts a lot through that process. And I don't know if I would do it again for a number of reasons, but having completed it, I'm glad that I did. Obviously, but early in my career here, my previous chair kind of started grooming me for administration.
I see.
He, kind of put that seed in my head that he saw me as the next chair of the department. A lot of things happened in between that statement and where we are now.
Yes.
But I like the organization. I love solving puzzles.
Mhm.
So being able to put the things together that make a successful outcome.
Sure.
I love that part of it. Supervising faculty and staff is not my favorite
Right.
part.
Sure.
But I think that's in most jobs, right? The
Mhm.
people part sometimes is a little bit more difficult than the
So,
straight administrative.
yeah, it would be, especially a group of people that you've worked with for
Sure.
that.
It's a
Yeah, that
different,
creates challenges
it's a different
in every job.
environment. In every job, absolutely. Yeah.
So when you became tenured, I don't know what the proper term is. Had you written? I know how the history department works, and or the history programs work. You write books.
Yeah.
You nobody reads them,
They
and
sit on the shelf. And
they
collect
sit on a
dust.
shelf and
Yeah.
gather dust, and sometimes a scholar might peruse it just so they can
Sure.
mock it. But
That sounds awful.
it does, doesn't it?
It does. Who wants to be a
Right,
historian?
exactly. How does it work in your department?
Yeah, it's similar but different.
Okay.
So our expectations aren't books, but
Mhm.
definitely peer-reviewed publication journal articles.
Mhm.
So for us, it was, the expectation was you have 12 peer-reviewed publications by the time you go up for tenure, in addition to all your service and teaching has to be excellent as well.
Mhm.
So I think I had 13, so just over that
Just
mark.
over the limit.
I made that.
Have you continued to
Oh yeah,
to write and
absolutely.
to publish? Okay.
Yeah, so that's part of the requirements for professor also. So I was promoted to full professor in 2022.
I see.
So
Okay.
you have to do similar research for that second level promotion.
Now explain that that transition to assistant professor to, as you said, real professor.
Yeah.
I guess it's full professor.
Well, there's a middle, right? There's
is there a middle?
There's
Okay.
assistant professor, associate professor, and full professor.
Well, maybe I should know more about this, but I don't.
That's
so,
okay. I mean,
fill me
yeah.
in.
So assistant professor is kind of like, I worked for a law office for a while. It's like your baby lawyer. It's like your baby professor.
Okay.
No.
I understand.
Yeah,
No
disrespect at all. We were all there, but that's where your focus is really on your research.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you're getting your feet firmly grounded in your teaching. But the expectation there is that you spend the majority of your time doing your research and teaching, but you don't have a lot of service commitments for that first 6 years.
Okay.
Once you go up for tenure, hopefully successfully navigate through that process, then you're an associate professor.
Okay.
With tenure. It doesn't mean you can never get fired. I think that is a misunderstanding. But anyway,
yes.
I digress.
Right.
Not that I think I'm going to get fired. Edit all that out. But,
I'll let you know if I hear anything.
Okay, thank you. Please do. So then you don't. So for assistant, you are on a time clock. You're on a tenure clock, and that's 6 years. So in some circumstances like COVID, everybody was extended a year.
Oh, okay.
If you have some health issues or if you have a baby, etc., you can extend it a year, but you can't usually extend it more than 1 year. So pretty much you have 6 years. If you don't pass the tenure process, then you're politely asked to look for another job.
I see.
So it's a big deal when you make associate with tenure because then you don't have to go through that specific process. Even if you never make professor, you've always got tenure.
I see.
Again, unless you do something crazy.
Yes. Right.
So again,
understood.
In the state of Texas, tenure isn't guaranteed. You can be let go if you do something that violates policy or is a crime, etc.
Okay.
So then that next phase is going to be where you continue to do your research. Your teaching should be pretty much set by then. I mean, we always improve, right? But you've had 6 years of experience to be pretty confident in the classroom, and your service expectations increase. So as I mentioned earlier, that's when I was associate chair, became graduate programs director. So you just have higher expectations, but you still are expected to do your research and publish.
Sure. Yes.
So if you are interested in going up for a full professor, which it's not, you don't have to, it's a choice, then you go through the same tenure process or the same process as when you were going up for tenure, but it's just a promotion, not the tenure decision.
I see. And so what would be the benefit of going from an assistant,
an associate to a full professor?
full professor?
Yeah, the benefit, well, it's the highest promotion that we can receive unless we're retired and we get emeritus.
Okay.
But there's a pay raise.
Okay.
It's recognition.
Okay.
Yeah, really, it's recognition.
And you mentioned a little bit ago that you had a child while you're pursuing tenure, I guess is.
Well, I had my first child when I was finishing my master's and my second child when I was finishing my PhD. So actually, I interviewed for this position when my youngest, was 5 weeks old.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, first time, obviously, I had left him, again, just coming up from Houston, not a long flight, but it got delayed coming home because of weather. It was a whole thing. But so when we moved here in the summer of 2010, I had a 4-year-old and a 6-month-old.
Wow.
So, you know,
and a move.
And a move. My grandmother moved here, not with us, but she moved to Arlington. My mom retired from her job the following October and moved to Arlington.
Oh, wow.
So I don't know how I would have made it through the process without my husband, my grandmother, and my mother that were all here helping with the boys. Yeah.
They're both boys.
They're both boys.
Okay.
They, my mom and my grandmother alternated days with my young one. You know, my older one at that time was in preschool that first year, so he wasn't as much of he didn't need as much full-time care as, of course, the 6-month-old did.
Sure.
But they also had a great opportunity to be with both of them in their, you know, first years of life.
That's special.
I'm so very grateful that they were able to, you know, change their lives.
Now, is this grandmother your mother's mother?
Yes.
Oh, okay. That would have been
a little bit different.
Yeah, it would have been different. Yeah.
But my grandmother lives south of campus about a mile, and my mom lives east of campus about 3 miles.
Wow.
Yep. And we live in Arlington, but further from campus.
That's great though.
Yeah.
That's very good.
Yeah.
And so as you did you receive your full professorship before you became the department chair?
Yes.
Okay. But that's not
kind of.
it's convoluted.
Yeah, right? Exactly. It's convoluted, Joe. So our previous chair was ready to leave, ready to move on to something else. And it is suggested, highly encouraged that a chair is a full professor because it's very hard. I still have research that I have an active research agenda, but it's so hard to get all of that done with all of the administrative expectations.
Right.
So to still be trying to achieve that next level of promotion while having all of those administrative responsibilities, it's just recommended that you get promoted before you're a chair.
Right.
Or other administrator. So back up. So he had his eye on ready to move to somewhere else. And so he, you know, was kind of like, okay, I'm ready to go. I need you to go up, and it's time for you to go up so that, you know, when I leave, there's another option.
Wow.
So I probably would have waited 1 more year, but that was the clock that I was given. And I put my package forward in academic year 21-22, received promotion in spring of 22 that would go into effect September of 22, and I took over as interim department chair in August of 22.
Very good. And your department, from my conversations with others in your department, you have some pretty interesting people that come through your department.
Sure.
You have people from the FBI, you've got
Absolutely.
Homeland Security,
Yeah.
you've got, I mean, any number of law enforcement
Oh yeah, we have
type
chiefs all
people.
over the
Chiefs,
DFW
that's right. Yeah,
area.
just
That's right.
like Chief Cook
Yeah, Chief Cook
yesterday.
yesterday. Yep.
And so, um, what is it about UTA and in particular your department
Hmm.
that attracts those people?
I think it's multifaceted. One thing is we, and I'm not saying that other departments are not, but we are very student focused,
Mm-hmm.
and we pride ourselves in recognizing both the benefit and the struggle that many of our full-time practitioners experience while they're going to school.
Right.
We create a whole master's program really around that
Mm-hmm.
experience. And so many of our former students, alumni that are in positions across the United States, but
Mm-hmm.
across the region for
Mm-hmm.
sure, in high level positions with master's degrees, it's partly because we created the program that would work for them. So I think that
While they're working.
while they're working,
Mm-hmm.
right, while they're climbing their own
Is
ladder.
that excuse me for interrupting your train of thought
No,
there,
it's
but
fine.
is that is a master's degree in your program, is it more common to have people who are already working in the field that pursue a master's degree in your department? Because, say, in the history department, I don't know that that is as
Right.
common. So,
Yeah, I think that it is definitely more common than some other fields. I think that for us, which might be a little bit different, like comparison to history,
mhm,
you can find a lot of entry level positions even without a degree, but certainly with
sure,
a bachelor's degree, right?
sure.
And so it's important then, if you are interested in moving further in your organization, that you might consider adding to your education.
Mhm,
So, that's why a lot of our graduate students that are practitioners come
mhm,
back, is because they're interested in either advancing in their person in their profession,
mhm.
or they're reaching kind of that retirement age and they're saying, okay, what am I going to do with all this? And
Right.
so they want to get a master's degree to be able to teach and use their experience.
Mhm,
But we have our fair share of undergrad to master's students as well. So we have two graduate programs, one that was created specifically with a practitioner in mind,
mhm,
that has been a cohort program since 2009.
mhm.
And then we have our traditional program that is located on the Arlington campus,
I see.
that can be, which Chief Cook did our traditional
Right.
program.
Mhm,
There's another chief at Arlington Police Department, and Deputy Chief Brooke Rollins, who's also an
mhm.
adjunct for us, who did our traditional program. Then we have a number of individuals that went through our cohort program.
I see.
Keith Owens did the cohort program.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so he is our alum as well.
Right, right.
We have Chief Miller, who's the chief of Irving PD, that went through that
Wow.
program. We have Deputy Chief Branch that also adjuncts for us, as does Chief Miller. So yeah, so the director of Tarrant County Juvenile Services
Wow.
was one of our students
Yeah.
in our program. So we have a
Great.
mixture.
Sure.
If our traditional program can serve either any population, but if we have someone that's specifically interested in continuing in academia, going on to a PhD, it's more likely that they're going to be in our
Mhm.
traditional program. Yeah.
Did you ever consider a law enforcement career yourself?
I did not.
Hmm.
Um, I did get some great field experience in juvenile justice.
Mhm,
So in 2014, I started working with Dallas County Juvenile Department as contract employee, as a
mhm.
liaison with the Annie E. Casey Foundation, that focuses on juvenile detention alternatives. So
Oh, I see.
keeping kids in the community that
Sure.
aren't a public safety risk. So I
Mhm,
did more policy and administrative work with them for about 5 years, which was so interesting and helpful, not only to my academic career, but really understanding the nuts and bolts of how juvenile justice works.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, my
Yeah.
dissertation was about disproportionate outcomes for kids in the juvenile justice system. So
Mhm.
I had that theoretical knowledge.
Right.
Obviously, my PhDs in juvenile justice, but to actually work for 5 years with a
Mhm.
large county has yeah, has been really beneficial, I think, to me, but definitely to my students.
Sure. What role do you think that your career or your brief career
Mm-hmm.
in the Navy has played in your adult life?
I mean, I can't imagine my adult life without that experience. Um, Getting me out of small town East Texas, right?
Right.
Exposing me to the great big world, at least the United States. I never got to
Sure.
go overseas as part of
Mm-hmm.
the military. Um, Being able just to have different experiences, see things from different perspectives. My best friends are still my friends from the military. So just
Yes.
let's see, we're in early October. We celebrated a 50th birthday for one of my friends that was my workmate and roommate when I was in Fort Gordon. She
Mm-hmm.
was from the Air Force.
Uh-huh.
And two friends that I went to the Defense Language Institute with that were all still, one is Navy and one was Air Force, that were
Right.
all still in touch. So my, longtime best friends are my military friends.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody knows that bonds you, right?
Yes.
All the vets know that,
Yes.
those people that you meet and those experiences that you go through, whether they are, I was never wartime, but whether they
Mm-hmm.
are, combat experiences or sitting at a desk and passing the time, and
Right.
those are those that bond you for life. So yeah, I can't imagine doing life without them. Obviously, my husband. I'm not saying
Mm-hmm.
that obviously, but my
I
husband
understand. No, I
of 25
understand.
years, um,
Right. Right.
helping me just to have, not only this work ethic, I think that
Mm-hmm.
I honed. I think I had some of it before I joined the military, but
Mm-hmm.
honed in the military. Um, the perspective of, but did you die? Did anybody die in that situation? So you have a
Right.
different level of
Sure.
understanding stress, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And when I worked in a law firm, and everybody would get so stressed out and so over the top, and I'm like, nobody's dying here today.
Right.
No,
Right.
we don't. Yes, okay, this is high pressure situation, but everybody's going to walk out of here alive and well. So it kind of gives you that perspective, or it gives me that
Mm-hmm.
perspective. I mean, it set up my education.
Yes.
So with, it was the pre 9/11 GI Bill that got
Mm-hmm.
me through my undergraduate degree and part of my master's degree, and then Hazelwood
Yes.
took me through my PhD, and I am,
Yes. God bless Texas.
God bless Texas, and I'm so very grateful. I still have 100 hours to legacy to my boys, and
I've got
my
50.
there you go. My senior will be starting UTA in the fall,
That's
and
great.
he will have some of those hours legacy
Yeah.
over to him. So
Yes.
yeah, so just a totally different outlook on life. I
Yes.
think
Yes.
ways to perceive the world and people around you differently.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, the benefits that you
Yes.
receive from being in the military, whether that's education benefits. We bought land with our
Right.
veterans land benefit.
Mm-hmm.
My husband is a Homes for Heroes agent, so
Oh,
for
really?
for
That's
every
wonderful.
veteran that he serves, he gives back a part of his commission to them.
Very good.
So, and he's very familiar with how to help them navigate through funding and things
Yes.
related to the
Yeah,
military.
and
So
that's particularly challenging for people coming out of the
it
military.
is challenging.
Yeah. So the future,
Okay.
where do you see yourself going from here? Where do you go from here? Do you retire as the chair of the?
So now we're going to have this on tape. And so
Yes,
when we
that's
look
right.
back,
I
we're
want
going
to
to
know
see,
your.
okay, what did I say?
Yeah. So what did you say and
Yeah.
what did you do? That's
right.
what.
Yeah. Okay. Where is my future?
Yes. What do you hope to do?
Right. Well, I don't intend to stay in the position of chair for more than 5 years.
Okay.
I think that it's an amazing experience, and I want other people to be able to have that experience of leading their department.
Sure.
I don't want to be that person.
Is that pretty standard? 5 years?
No.
Oh. Okay.
So in the College of Liberal Arts, we have a number of chairs who have been there 15 or more
Oh
years.
my. Okay.
That's just, I decided that going into this position, it was going to be a finite amount of time, that I would
Mm-hmm.
have some goals that I want to accomplish for the department, and then I
Sure.
will turn the reins over to somebody else.
All right. Very good.
So after that, I'm not really sure, but
Mm-hmm.
it'll be at UTA. UTA is my home.
Right.
Mav up.
Right.
My kid is coming here in the fall,
Yes.
and who knows where my other one will be in 5 years.
Right.
But UTA is my home.
Sure.
My family, like I said, live here. My grandmother said we're not moving again unless you're moving me into the dirt. So she is turning 92
Yeah. Oh
next
my.
month.
Okay. Yeah, that
But
explains the sense of humor,
yes,
that kind of dark sense of humor
right.
there.
So I'm just really looking forward to what is in the
Uh-huh.
future. I'm involved in some great projects with the community. One of my passions as an administrator, but also as a researcher, is serving our community,
Mm-hmm.
and doing the work that they need to be able to fulfill their mission. So we have some great projects with Arlington Police Department, City
Mm-hmm.
of Irving, etc.
Yeah.
So definitely continue those great projects. Now I'm in a position, fortunately, where I don't have the pressure of making that next promotion. So
Yes.
I am able to choose the projects that I want to work on and that are really important, I think, to both, my what I like to do, but also that are
Sure.
important to the community. I work with an organization called Girls Embracing Mothers that supports
Hmm.
girls of incarcerated moms, and so
Oh.
we bring them to visit their moms once a month in prison,
Mm.
and then we also do workshops with moms while they're incarcerated, and then some reentry work as well. That is here. I'm going to continue doing that
Yes.
work. So um, I'm sure there will probably be another administrative position that is waiting for me in 5 years.
Okay.
I'll put this on record. It's not going to be Dean.
Okay. No.
So Dean Newman, you're safe.
Right, she's safe. Provost, baby. Right?
No, I doubt it. Yeah, Provost Brown, you're also safe.
She's fine too.
Yeah,
Right?
and President Kelly, you are definitely safe. But yeah, I don't know what that next thing is.
Right.
It might be more grant work and research
Yes.
work and going back to
Sure.
faculty. So we'll see what that
Right.
looks like.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, are there any questions that you would like to address that I haven't asked?
Oh, I don't think so.
No, I think we covered it pretty
I
well.
think so.
All right. Well, thank you so much for
Absolutely.
doing this. I really appreciate it. And you have such an interesting story, and you can now it's in posterity. I
Right.
don't know. It's up for
Yeah.
posterity. I don't know how to put that.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a
Yes.
pleasure talking, about my experience. But I think my experience is like a lot of people. We all have interesting stories,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, absolutely.
Where we are now came from a culmination of so many different points throughout our lives, and some we may have seen them as difficult or tragic at the time, but
Mm-hmm.
make us who we are. And I appreciate the project you're doing.
Right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.